Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my reading wrap up for February for you. And even though February is the shortest month of the year, I still managed to read 6 books, which I'm pretty happy about. It definitely helped that I was sick for 2 days and I was on a holiday for a week as well. So let's take a look at what I've been reading. The first book that I read this month was Must Love Books, which is a book about Nora. Nora works in publishing and she's kind of trying to figure out what she wants. The company that she works for right now is slowly getting worse. People are getting fired. She's taking on more and more work as an assistant, which she's been for a couple of years. And throughout that, she goes to this event conference thing where they have like their little book stand. One of their writers is speaking. She gets to talk to this guy who, of course, ends up being our main love interest. But the main thing that is happening in this book is that she is unhappy in her current workplace and she kind of tries to dabble into working for this other place at the same time, seeing if that could bring her a more positive future. But mainly this book is more about like mental health. Like, she's not happy where she is right now. She's trying to figure out how to create a better like life environment for herself. She has trouble talking about her mental health to other people, so other people and her friends, they might not realize how unhappy she is at the moment. And I think it's played out really well. Like, sometimes people make decisions and in the end it's all like, oh yeah, it was her mental health, but it wasn't really clearly described throughout the book. For this book, I felt like they did that really well. And in the end, of course, things go wrong for a little bit, as they always do in these type of books, and then they resolve themselves. But this is not the book where that happens in the very last chapter and then like the second to last chapter and then the chapter after that everything is fixed again. It has a more gradual, logical approach to it. So I give this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Honestly, any book that is about somebody that likes books, I tend to enjoy. Then the second book that I read was Snowed In. We were still in definitely winter time right now. It's really sunny today and the weather is getting better, so I'm so ready for spring. I'm sure we will get back to winter soon as well, because that's how things normally go here in the Netherlands, but let's see. So Snowed In is the second book in the Fitzpatrick Christmas series. I read the other book, that was my first book of January, I think, that I read, the first one in the series. And this book is about the brother of one of our main characters and another girl. What I loved about this book is our main girl is a knitter. And that's something that I like doing, so I could relate. This is a fake dating trope. So these two decide to help each other out during Christmas time. They start fake dating, and throughout that, stuff happens, and of course all of a sudden they fall in love with each other, because that's what always happens. Just as in the last book in this series, I really enjoyed the banter between the two people. Even though, of course, there is misunderstandings about how much they actually like each other, like, the banter is still nice. It's not in an annoying way. Like, sometimes you see two people's perspectives and it's just annoying how clearly they're not understanding each other. But here it was written in such a way that I really enjoyed reading it still, even though you're in both of their heads, which is a difficult thing, because you can see what he is thinking, you can see what she is thinking, and you know that it doesn't fully compute with what they think the other one is thinking, but it still works out. I'm giving away the conclusion of this book, but this is what you expect from these type of books anyway, right? So also this one I gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed both the books in this series. I think there isn't any other ones in this series yet, but maybe there will be in the future. Then I listened to a book, and that's the first time I did this. I've never done audiobooks before, and I realized why, because I also listen to a lot of podcasts, and I cannot listen to audiobooks and podcasts at the same time, and I kind of would do that on the same amount of times. And for audiobooks, I'm already way behind, or for podcasts I should say, I'm already way behind on everything that I'm trying to listen to, so I don't want to add more to that. I prefer to like, I guess this would work if I wouldn't be listening to podcasts, because the book that I listened to was a memoir. It was Paris Hilton's memoir, Paris the Memoir. That's the title of the book. And it listens in a similar way as my podcasts would. So in that sense, it might work, but it's taking up podcast listening time, and I just prefer to listen to podcasts instead of to books. Um, Anyway, that's my review about audiobooks in general. The Paris memoir, I gave 3 stars. This is one of the first like proper memoirs that I've read, I feel like, and I find it even hard to really rate these because of course there is not like a story that was made up, so the ending or the way that things go might not be the way that you would build a book, because of course this is somebody's actual life. It was definitely interesting because of course I've known Paris Hilton, like she was very famous when I was younger, and I guess she still has a huge following, but I'm just not as aware of what is happening in all the like gossipy worlds anymore. But it was interesting to hear what she's been going through for all these years, especially this part about she went to this school that wasn't actually a school, like for troubled children that mistreated her like a lot, and everybody else that went to these types of schools. So that was definitely interesting to hear about, and it's weird to rate somebody's life story, but the audiobook was by herself as well, so she did the talking throughout like the book, and that made it more interesting to listen to in a way. But I don't know, I don't think she is my type of person, because in the end, like she portrays this personality, and she also talks about that maybe isn't fully her. She's very smart, like she's built multiple businesses, so she knows what she's doing, but still something in her feels like she needs to, and that's how it comes across to me. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, that's possible too, but something in there makes it feel to me like she's pretending to be this person, or maybe not pretending, but she's put up this persona that is like Paris Hilton, that she brings across to the world out there, which isn't fully, like, it's almost like she's playing a character because she knows that is what will work and that is what will get her the fame that she wants. But she is really smart, so she should show that smartness a little bit more, which it seems like she's starting to do that more and more throughout what she's saying. She's trying to use her voice to make sure that people don't end up in the same situation that she did as a kid, those type of things. So she's definitely starting to do that more from what I can read in this book. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was okay. It was nice to listen to, but like I said, it just interferes with my podcast listening time when I do audiobooks, so I'm not going to do that anytime soon, I don't think. It was nice. Memoirs are new to me as well. So anyway, next book, I think I said I give that one 3 stars, right? 3 stars for Paris. Then I read Riley Sager's The House Across the Lake. I read this in like 2 days, maybe 2.5, while I was sick, so that definitely helped. It's interesting, this book. I gave it 4 stars, and I was kind of doubting between 3 and 4, so let's say it's 3.5, because this book, like, it definitely kept me engaged. Throughout the whole book, I was interested to see what was going to happen next, because there was plot twist after plot twist, especially towards the end of the book, which I feel is normal for a thriller, because this is a thriller. Riley Sager is a pretty well-known thriller writer. I think this is my first book that I read by him, so I didn't really know what to expect. Something that really bothered me in this book, 2 things, which is why it's definitely more 3.5 than 4. One is that there is this paranormal aspect that all of a sudden shows up in the middle of the book, which I just don't agree with. Like, I want my thriller to either be like full on clearly paranormal, or I want my thriller to be not paranormal. Most of the time I don't read anything paranormal specific anyway, but when halfway through the book all of a sudden something turns out to be a bit more paranormal than you'd expect, it's kind of like, really, is that the reason why these things happened the way that they did? That's yeah, that's just how I felt. And from reading a few of the reviews after I finished this book, I think I understand that Riley Sager tends to do a little bit of paranormal more often, or hint at the paranormal anyway, in his books. So maybe that's just me not being familiar with his type of writing. Could be. Second thing, as in a lot of thrillers lately, I feel like our main character drinks, which makes her, of course, a less reliable person as our like main character, because maybe what she sees isn't actually what's happening because she just drinks a lot and doesn't remember things properly. But somewhere towards the end of the book, and this is not a spoiler per se, but you realize that she just hasn't shared everything that she knows with you. There is stuff that she knows, not that she hasn't forgotten because she's drinking or that didn't come through properly. It's just stuff that the main character never shared with you. And I'm like, when I'm reading from a person's perspective, I need to know everything that they know. Otherwise, it's just at the end they're like, oh yeah, and actually I never told you this. This is also something that happened that you just didn't know, which kind of defeats the purpose of like the suspense building up, because if I would have known, the suspense wouldn't have been the same, basically. So, but still, because there was plot twist after plot twist, because it happened multiple times in the, like, especially towards the end of the book, it was like, oh, so this is happening, okay. And then that wasn't fully what was happening, and then again that wasn't fully what was happening. So that is what I like about like a good thriller, is that you get surprised multiple times, and that is what this book did. So that's why I ended up giving it 4 stars. But those two things that I didn't like, they did annoy me a little bit. So 3.6 maybe. Yeah, that's that one. Then I read The Troubled Girls of Dragomir Academy. This book shows, I thought, witches flying around a big tower on the cover. You will see the cover here. Turns out that it was just girls sitting in the windows instead of them flying around the tower, which I don't know why I interpreted that differently. But I was assuming this book to be a little bit more magic involved. And there is magic in this book. There are sorcerers, I think, the male version of witches in this book, and the men are the ones that are protecting this country, because there were witches in the past that did bad things, and because of that, curses and things just pop up in different places every now and then, and the sorcerers are the ones that are supposed to protect the people from these things when they happen. Now, the brother of our main character is a possible sorcerer. They go and check out this boy at a certain age to see if he has magic. So they do some tests and things to figure out if he has magic. Our main character kind of accidentally lets a goat walk through the whole thing. And because of that, they think she ends up in this school. The Dragomir school is a school for troubled girls. The Troubled Girls of Dragomir Academy. Yeah, that's why the title is that. So throughout the book we learn why certain people have been selected as troubles, and I don't want to give away the reason, but yeah, these girls learn a lot about themselves throughout the book, and in the end they fight against the bad part of society, men in general. And I liked the book, but because I was expecting more magic at the start, it ended up being something slightly different than I expected. Plus, I think the story is a little bit more meant for like younger girls, like maybe YA type. So the story, even though it was a good story, it wasn't per se 100% good for me, if that makes sense. I enjoyed reading it, but it was a little bit on the childish side, I guess, which is not a bad thing per se. But I gave it 3 stars because I enjoyed reading it. I also read this one in a couple of days time, so I went through it fairly quickly. Also because I was on holiday and we went skiing, and in the mornings the snow was still good, in the afternoons it wasn't, so it gave me a good bit of reading time. But yeah, I enjoyed reading the book, but it wasn't my favorite. That's basically it. And then lastly, I read Devil's Peak, which is the first book in the Benny Griesel series. This book plays in South Africa, and I think that it's really interesting to read. But I've also noticed, I think this is the second book by a South African author. At least I'm pretty sure the author is South African as well, that I've read. And there's this different thing in the culture that makes it harder for me to get into the story because the way that they are written are very South African in a way. Now, what advantage I have when I'm reading a book is that South African has a little bit of Dutch mixed into it, so sometimes they're referencing certain things or they're using words that are very similar to Dutch, which makes it easier for me to follow what's happening or what they're even talking about, because the book is written in English and then every now and then there is this, to me, Dutch-like reference in there as well. Um, it's like a murder case where basically somebody is trying to figure things out, and our main character is a detective, but we also get their perspective from this girl that is a prostitute and confesses something at a church, which we don't really know how all of that links in together yet at the start. And we switch perspectives a couple of times. But the interesting thing is that sometimes from one paragraph to the next, we switch perspectives, and then we need like 1 or 2 paragraphs to figure out whose perspective we're actually reading from, which was yeah, interesting. But also this one I think I read in like 3 days or something, again because it was on holiday, but also because it did keep me engaged enough. This series has at least 7 books at the moment, and I'm in doubt whether I want to read more. I did give the book 3 stars because there was enough happening, but also some parts were a little bit too graphic for my liking, and that didn't even come to the killing part of things. You're actually also seeing the perspective from a serial killer who has a good reason to be doing what he's doing, but still. So yeah, certain parts I didn't really like reading. And I don't know, again, whether it's a male perspective. It's written by a male writer, and I realize I just tend to read more books written by women. So maybe that is something that I'm just not used to, the way that this book was written. Partly the male perspective, the male way of writing, but also the South African part that is just not like my familiar style of reading, which doesn't mean that it's a bad way of writing. It's just new to me. Yeah, I don't know if I'm like, anyway, the premise of this story is there is a detective, there is another guy who is killing people that did something bad to children. The detective is trying to figure that out, and somewhere in there the prostitute also fits into the story, which we find out later on why that is the case. Now the book ends with a few like open parts still. The prostitute's story changes depending on who she's talking to, so I'm not even sure which part of her story is actually true at this point either. Also towards the end you learn some things and you're like, wait, so everything that she was saying was not fully true? I'm not sure, and there is 6 other books in the series, so maybe we will learn more about it in those, if she even exists still, because Benny Griesel is the detective, so that's what the series is about. Yeah. I don't know if that was a proper review of that book, but I enjoyed reading it more than I expected, because this is a book that had been on my Kindle for a while and I never really picked it up properly. Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you read any of these books, what your thoughts were. If there's any fun books that you read in the last month, definitely let me know. Maybe I can add them to my list, or maybe I did read them. We can talk about them. And that's it for today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Bye bye!